Okay, we're going to start right now, and I will share my screen.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome. You have joined Small Business, Big Audience, your guide to growing online sales, Part 1, Building a Website That Sells. My name is Javier Cano. I am a Senior Demand Generation Manager with Hostway, and I'll be your moderator today. Before introducing our speakers, I'd like to go through one quick housekeeping item. You can participate in this webinar by submitting questions through the console. Type in your question and hit submit. We will reserve the last 10 minutes to answer your questions. Now, let's introduce our speakers for today. We have Amanda Farmer, Hostway's Communication Manager. Amanda Farmer has been a marketing and PR writer and communication strategist for 10 years. Prior to joining Hostway, she worked on campaigns and content for companies including Curves International, Hunter Douglas Window Fashions, Howard Miller Clock Company, and one of the country's largest credit unions. We also have Dilly Lackham, Web's Planet Head of Communications. She manages the company's marketing and PR activities. She has a rich background in marketing communications, planning, and execution, with a particular focus on online content writing and distribution. Now let's begin. Amanda, you can take it from here.
All right, thanks, Javi. So 3 topics we're going to cover today. We're just going to jump right in here. The first thing we're going to talk about is why even create a website. There are a lot of other options out there, social media, so Dilly will cover a little bit of that for us. Second, we're going to talk about how to design and write a website that sells. And third, we'll talk a little bit about how to make your website Google-friendly or search engine-friendly in general. But before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about who we are. So Hostway, we have about, we're founded in 1998, so we're an old company in internet terms. We have about 600,000 direct customers, plus over 2 million customers that we service through our white labeling and partner groups, which basically means they resell our services. And an interesting fact is that 40% of telecommunications companies in the Fortune 500 resell our cloud services. So beyond that, we host over 600,000 websites and about 550,000 domain names. So we have a lot of experience in helping small businesses set up websites and succeed online. And then Dilly, do you want to talk a little bit about who Web's Planet is?
Sure, thanks, Amanda. Web's Planet is literally a founder of the site builder industry. We build a system called the Eclipse. It's a white label platform that enables companies like Hostway to roll out website, mobile site, and social media site creation and management solutions. We power a number of different solutions for creation of websites and mobile sites, and our online presence platform for SMBs enables SMBs, small medium businesses, to create one content source for all screens and devices. Our familiarity with SMBs that we've learned over the years has guided us in helping develop our strategy and platform, which is easily integrated with additional services that we know that SMBs are interested in, and as they emerge, we continue to integrate new services like domain registration and so forth. Everything is geared towards making online life easier and more effective for online SMBs and their service providers.
Great. And so first off, we're going to start by talking about why even create a website. And Dilly has a lot of information on this, so I'm going to let her go ahead and take this section.
Okay, so the online space is something that's quickly evolved, and the questions that small, medium businesses are asking have evolved just as quickly. Whereas 15 years ago, the question was, why do I need a website if I'm already in the phone book? 3 years ago, it was, why create a social media page if I have a website? Things have changed, and now social media sites are not only more pervasive, they're more sophisticated. So the recent question that we're hearing is, why spend money creating a website when I can make sales through my free social media page? So let's look into that. With all the sales potential of social sites like Twitter and Facebook, why would I even start a website? So it's true, you are faced with lots of opportunities for going online and for having an online presence, but a website is your home base. A website is where you'll direct all your traffic through using tools that are online like Twitter, Facebook, and so forth. A website when the URL that is yours, it's your own, it acts basically as your own online real estate. It's not controlled by anyone else like Facebook or so forth that can change its policies day by day or lose your data or go out of business. You own the website and you collect statistics about the web through your website that you can use. There's a number of additional reasons, first of all, to set up a website because we know that that's where your consumers are. Your consumers are looking things up on your on the internet and through their mobile devices, and that's where you need to be. Setting up additional social networking sites and Twitter accounts and other tools works together with your website, and they all together present your marketing front. They don't work against each other, they work together. But everything directs traffic towards your website where you control what's going on. Having different kinds of platforms, like a Facebook page for your business, or a Twitter account for your business, or a Google Plus account, which is also very important for small, medium businesses, will enable you to speak to different audiences on different levels so that you're not only speaking to people who look you up on your website, you're also speaking to people who might encounter your brand on Facebook, and you can speak to them on a different level, so you're speaking to different audiences more effectively. For example, the majority of Facebook users in the United States are females between the ages of 18 and 25, whereas people looking you up on mobile would be probably a whole different ballgame. So you can give different information to different kinds of audiences and attract them more effectively. Another very important thing to remember about your website is the actionable statistics that you can gain through managing your website. And you gain these very easily. They're very easy tools to use. And you would understand what kind of people come to your website, what they're looking for that brought you to your website. These are statistics that you can't get the right drill down or the same drill down that you can get from on your website page, on your Facebook page, or from your Twitter account or your Google Plus account. When you manage online presence that's home-based in a website, you can build credibility and customer loyalty over time. I, for one, would find it less enticing to buy something from a business that only had a Facebook page but didn't have a website. You might even start a blog that will help you connect with your audience on a whole different level and develop thought leadership in your field. But the whole point of developing an online presence would be to bring the traffic home to your home base, to your website.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And we're going to talk a little bit more about social media and other means of driving people to your website and how it all works together next week in our Part 2 webinar. So be sure to sign up for that if you haven't already. But moving on to the featured topic for today, how to design and write a website that sells. So the first thing you're going to come to when you're looking at creating a website is figuring out what you want to call it. So you have to choose a domain name and register a domain name. So we could be more technical about it if we wanted to, but basically what a domain name is your web address. So you might hear someone reference DNR, and if they're not a doctor in a hospital, they don't work for the Department of Natural Resources, chances are they're probably referring to domain name registration. So, for example, if someone asks me, what's your company's domain, I'll say it's www.hostway.com. Now, more technically speaking, the domain name is the nickname for your IP address, which is just like houses have addresses, websites have addresses that tell computers where they're located. And it looks like a group of 10 numbers separated by 4 decimal points. That's your IP address. And you may need to have that at some point. But for the most part, for customer-facing communications, you're going to want to use your domain name. So moving on to some tips for your domain name. You're going to want to make it, you don't want people to have to guess your domain name to find you. So the obvious choice is to use your company name. But if that's not available, you can choose to use the shortened version. But the important thing is you want to make it something that will be easy to find. So by the same token, your domain name should be easy to spell. Now, the thing we run across sometimes is, unfortunately, some company names are hard to spell, and that can be a problem. So, you know, people used to choose company names in many cases based on what would appear in the phone book first. So you'd see a lot of AAA plumbing and AA maid services and things like that. But now that people are using web searches to find companies, we have new considerations to look at when choosing a business name. And choosing a name that's easy to spell and remember is pretty important. It's not a requirement, obviously. There are plenty of successful businesses with difficult names, but it definitely is going to give you an advantage when taking your business online. So all that to say, if your company name isn't set in stone and it's difficult to spell, you might want to think about changing it before you start a website. You might also consider registering a few potential misspellings of your name and having them redirect to your website. So for example, you'll notice if you type www.gogol.com with one O, it'll still take you to Google. And that's because Google knew that people would be careless sometimes when entering their name, and they still wanted people to get to their site. So they registered a misspelling and had it redirect to their website. It's also a good idea to register your domain for more than 1 year. 2, 5, or 10 years are the options a lot of times. Domain names do go back up for sale when they're allowed to expire. So you don't want to see that happen to your business in case you forget to renew your domain name 1 year. It's just registering for longer periods of time just gives you one less thing you have to remember. And then, of course, most hosting companies like HostRate will also notify you before your registration expires. But it's still just nice to have one less thing on your plate. Domain names are extremely affordable for the most part. It'll probably vary by the domain you choose, such as .com, .org versus some of the more specialized ones like .asia, for example. We charge $9.95 a year for .com, .org, and .net domain names, for example, and then the price goes up from there. So for most of you, one of those domains will be your best option because they're the most common and they're the easiest for your customers to remember. So if you're a for-profit company, you'll probably want to choose .com, whereas a lot of nonprofits choose .org, and that's just a standard. A few other quick tips. Don't use hyphens or numbers in your name. Consider using a couple of top-level domains and redirecting them to your main site. And this is kind of like what we talked about with registering misspellings. People don't always know if you're .com, .net. And also check copyright.gov to make sure that your domain name doesn't infringe on any copyrights, because you really don't want to have to change it later. So now that you have your domain, the question becomes, what are people going to see when they come to it? And in this section, we'll go through some of the basics and best practices of designing and writing your website to make sure that you're going into it with a plan. So first, you need to figure out what type of site you need. And there are many ways we could classify the types of sites you could choose, but we've chosen to simplify it here to 2 basic types, informational and e-commerce. And informational sites, which is what we're showing here, is some of you just need a place to share information with people who are interested in your business. So a lot of restaurants, for example, create sites that feature their menu, their hours of operation, location, and maybe about us information. But to order food, you have to go to the physical restaurant. So this is an example of what we're going to call an informational site. And another example would be a blog, where you post videos and information, but there's no particular product or service being sold. And you might be selling a service that doesn't lend itself to packaged online pricing. So maybe you're a freelance photographer or a writer, or you're a remodeling contractor, and you prefer to quote prices on a case-by-case basis. Or maybe you're a doctor's office and you need a site to make prospective patients feel comfortable coming to you, but they still have to make an appointment to actually visit you. The other type of site is e-commerce, and some of you might be wanting to create sites where money actually exchanges hands for a product or service, and these are what we're going to consider e-commerce sites. So for these, you're going to need to install a shopping cart function, which we will talk about more in a moment. So this is just kind of a summary of what I just told you. Basically, it boils down to whether you want people to learn something on your site and then eventually lead to a sale, or you want somebody to be able to go ahead and buy something from your site. So what pages do you need to include? There are a few common pages that most websites have. Now, obviously, there's just going to be, there's a lot of variety. There are a lot of different things that are going to make sense for some businesses and not others. But these are a few that are very common. So the home page, obviously, every site has a home page. This is the main entryway to your website. And second, usually there's a services or product page that tells people what are you selling or offering. So consider adding multiple pages per product versus putting them all on one page if you have more than one product. A lot of times it's good to have each product have its own page, and then you can, depending on how they're categorized or what makes sense, you can link out to them from one overview services and product page. Third, you're going to want an about page in most cases, and this will talk about, especially if you're a photographer, or you have some sort of a trade that you're offering, what is your expertise? Now, this isn't about what is, how many pets you have, or where you live, you like long walks on the beach, etc. No, this is more about what's your background, why should people trust you, and why should people use your services. Fourth, a lot of sites are going to want to have reviews and testimonials pages, and this will tell people what your customers are saying about your products. So obviously it takes a little bit of time to gather these reviews, and if you haven't done any work for customers yet, you might not have this yet. But as soon as you do have a customer, highly recommend just having them, if they're a happy customer, write up a little quote and have them approve it, or see if they'll write a little quote for your website, because this is a hugely important part in how people make decisions for purchasing services on the web. You're also probably going to want a contact page. Now, we'll talk about how throughout your website you're going to want calls to action and contact information on every page, but you also want one central page that is just devoted to your contact information, because there will be a lot of people who will come to your site and just go straight to the contact page to figure out how to get in touch with you. And then, as we discussed, if you're an e-commerce company, you're also going to want a shopping cart. And there are a couple of ways to add a shopping cart function. So you can buy a shopping cart software that you install, or what I think a lot of people choose to do is you can purchase either on a monthly or a yearly basis a hosted shopping cart service. So whoever you're using to host your website, whether it's Hostbag or another hosting company, a lot of us offer that functionality, and it's something you can just add on. Okay, so there's kind of this question when you're getting started, do you design the site and then write content to fit into it, or do you write your content and then add it to the design? In a lot of cases, professional web writers and designers will tell you to write your site before designing. But since many of you are going to be creating websites for the first time, I'm going to recommend kind of employing a three-step process. So I think it's difficult to visualize what you should be writing when you haven't ever interacted with the web design program you'll be using. So I think it's best to get your basic website design in place first. So this means you set up placeholders for some of the pages we talked about in the previous slide, and maybe you pick the general color scheme and start playing with layout options. And then as you're writing the content, you'll figure out what you need to adjust. So, rather than one big box here, I know I need 3 boxes because I'm including 3 different products and that kind of stuff. And you can adjust the design as you enter the content into the site. And then you'll do one last look over to make sure everything's nice looking and professional and is easy for your visitors to follow down the path to whatever call to action you're taking them to. So that's a very unscientific way of saying, it depends, whatever works for you, but I recommend having a basic structure in place before you start writing. Building a website, you have 3 options basically when you're getting started building your website. There are a few different ways you can go about it, and they're going to depend on your resources. So some people are just going to prefer to hire someone to create their website, and there might be some of you like that here today. Maybe you are just here because you want to know what to look for to make sure the person building your site is doing it correctly and hitting the key points. Maybe you're more technical and you can code your site yourself, and you're just here today to learn about best practices for writing and design. But most of you, I would guess, would fall into a third camp, and this is those without prior design or web experience who want to build your site yourselves using a third-party design tool. And honestly, this might actually be easier than hiring someone in a lot of cases, because you're going to avoid having to communicate changes and going back and forth with the designer, which can be a struggle when you don't really know what you want yet. Sometimes it's easier just to do it yourself, and of course it's it's a little bit less expensive than hiring someone. So you can really do amazing things with do-it-yourself web design platforms today. Basically, all you have to do to create a site like one of these is choose the layout from among a few options and choose the colors you want, and it walks you through the process from A to Z. So you'll have a lot of options, and the templates are professional looking, they're nice, and you really can't go wrong. So since this isn't a product demonstration, we won't walk you through a demo right now, but if you are interested in seeing how our website builder tool works, which is the WebPlanet website tool that Dilly was talking about earlier, and all of these sites were built using that tool. If you do want to see how that works, you can get in touch with us at the end of the webinar, and we'll be happy to walk you through that. What we want to do right now is just give you some advice on what to do and what not to do when designing your site. So the 3 do's of website design. There are a lot of things we could put here, but just boiling it down to a few things. You want to build on a professional-looking design template. And you've heard me say this a lot already, but professional, professional, professional. It's very important because your website is going to give you credibility or it can take away your credibility. And a lot of that is just at first glance what it looks like. So look at websites of successful companies. Get a feel for what professional looks like. Your site doesn't have to have all the same features and bells and whistles, but a good design template will help you achieve a similar layout and color scheme. Simplicity is good. Now wait until you have your content before you start choosing images. So we talked a little bit about, I mentioned that you want to have a basic site structure in place before you start filling in content. But when it comes to choosing the actual images that will be on your site, you're going to want to wait until you have content. And the reason is because the right image adds to the content. It will clarify how a product looks or works. It'll clarify a difficult concept that you're trying to express on the page. And it'll convey the right feeling, a gut level reaction that adds to the content on the page. It's not a separate element. The content and the images need to work together to tell a story. And third, when you start entering text, use a sans serif font. Now, if you know about print design, a lot of times, the standard is to use a Times New Roman or a serif font because they're easier to read in print. But the opposite is actually true for web. Because of the low resolution of computer screens, serif fonts, the ones with the little flourishes on the ends of the letters, they look muddy on computer screens. And that's why the internet standard is to kind of use a clear and spacious sans serif font like Arial, Calibri, or Verdana. Some don'ts of web design, and once again, we could do a whole webinar just on this. But one of the main ones I want to say is don't use blinking graphics or auto-loading sound. We've all had that experience when we're sitting at work and we click on a website and all of a sudden our computer is blaring music, so we have to close the page quickly to make it stop. And it's really annoying, to be honest. So still, a lot of small businesses are using auto-loading sound, and people hate it. So blinking graphics are another favorite, mostly for sites that were built in the late 90s and early 2000s. People were just, I think, excited about the functionality and thought it would make their site look more high-tech, but things have changed a lot in terms of what is considered good design. So your site should help people through the process of researching and buying your product or services, bottom line. Obtrusive elements just are going to distract from your message, and honestly, like I said, they annoy people. Second, don't try to include all your products on one page. There are exceptions to this. I mean, obviously, if you only have one product, it's only going to go on one page for most people. But even if you have 3 products, it might be a good idea to spread them across separate pages. So if you want customers to be able to compare 3 products or services, have a page that shows the comparison, but still have individual pages for each product. And you're going to link out to these individual pages. So linking is going to be your best friend, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Third, don't use a flash intro page. Site designers, if you are hiring someone to create your site, this will be more of a concern. A lot of times site designers might be tempted to include an intro page with flash media, and these are the elaborate video pages or motion graphics pages that you sometimes see when you visit a company's homepage. And what do? In most cases, you say, okay, skip to site. And that's the problem. It's kind of a waste of time. A lot of visitors click right past it. But more importantly than that, it can make your site difficult to load on cell phones and mobile devices. And just here is an example of a website that was selected as one of the worst of 2011, actually, from the site. And I forgot to highlight it, but there's a resource called webpagesthatsuck.com. And this is a great resource for seeing how not to do web design in a lot of cases. So this what we're on now is an example of a website that they selected as one of the worst of 2011. So obviously, there are a few problems. There's just way too much text. There's no organization to it. There are a ton of competing colors vying for your attention. If you visited the site, you would hear that they have auto-loading music also. And so as you can see, when people come to a site like this, the problem is they don't really know where to look or where to go, so they just end up closing out of it. And here are two more examples of sites that are just overrun with competing colors and competing links and just a general lack of organization. So we'll talk a little bit more about how to write it, but as you're writing it, keep this in mind. Make believe that you're a prospect going through your site. There are a few questions to ask. Does the content make sense in any order you come to it? And does it provide the information you need? And remember that because of search engines, which catalog every page of your site, not everyone will come to your site through the home page. So do the pages make sense in any order and link to each other appropriately? Second, are there any orphaned pages? You want to make sure to avoid this, because what if this is the page that someone lands on? And what an orphaned page is it's a page that doesn't include links to any other pages. So maybe it's linked to from a page, but you go to it and there are no links. You want people and search engines to be able to get to other pages on your site. And this is going to be important for search engines too, which we're going to talk about more in the next section. Third, does the site lead you down a logical path, ending with a way to take action, purchase or contact? Because ultimately, that's the whole point. So the goal of every page is to drive your prospect to purchase or to educate them so that they know more about making a purchase. And website content should follow some tried and true guidelines to engage and motivate your visitors to take action. You need to include clear, persuasive calls to action on every page, make it easy for the readers to move through your site, and always direct them toward a way to purchase or learn more. For example, buy now, subscribe now, sign up, or contact us. Second, you want to use plain language, eliminating technical jargon or clearly explaining it. So be as succinct as possible. And here are a couple examples from plainlanguage.gov, which is a site set up by the government to teach businesses how to write more succinctly and clearly. And they set this up actually as a protection for American consumers, but I think it has a business application to it as well. Because if people can't understand what you're talking about, they're not going to buy from you. You want to break the content into short sections for easy scanning. Scannability is key on the web. You don't want big chunk paragraphs. This is not a magazine. This is a web page, and it needs to be scannable. Use descriptive headings and subheadings. So if there's a topic people are interested to, they can skip right to that heading. Use bulleted lists to showcase inventory lists or service features. Once again, you don't want lists within a paragraph. Anytime it's a list, you need to have a bell go off in your head that says, I need to turn this into bullet points. Finally, lead the reader through your site. This is huge. I think it's tempting for people who are new to creating websites to think of their website as a wheel with a bunch of separate spokes, like where we've got our homepage in the middle, and it links to this product, this About Us page, etc. And that's really not the best way to think about it. Each page is not an island. You should be leading customers down a path through your site. So for example, let's pick a pathway from Hostway.com. So first, we'll pick a product that you can't purchase directly online. So on our homepage, this banner comes up. Let's say the reader's attention is grabbed and they click on the link to view solution examples. So they go to this page, which gives them a high-level overview of the product, followed by two buttons at the top that give them the option to request a quote or chat with a sales representative. These are the calls to action for this page, because this product is not available for purchase directly through the site. The content still drives people clearly down the sales funnel. And some people will read the tiny bit of information at the top of the page and want to purchase right away. And obviously, you don't want to stand in their way. Some people just know what they want and they're ready. So give them a clear path to take to buy your product. And bright colored buttons are good. You always want calls to action, bright colored buttons toward the top of the page. But some people aren't going to be ready to buy right away. So maybe they're in an earlier stage of the buying process, or maybe they're just the type of people who research in great detail before they buy anything. And for those people, it's a good idea to have additional information available that will answer as many of their questions as possible. So for more complicated products like ours here, you're not going to want to put all that information on one page because it gets too cluttered and hard to follow. You want to create another page for this more in-depth information and include a link to it from the relevant product page. And don't be afraid of multiple pages. Better to have a page for each resource than a cluttered page that overloads people. What will happen is you'll lose customers if you make it too hard for them to find what they're looking for. So let's follow one of these links and see where it goes. Let's follow disaster recovery in the cloud. So it takes the customers to a form to fill out in order to download the white paper about disaster recovery in the cloud. So when they fill out this form, they get the white paper, and we get additional information about what the customer is interested in so we can better target future marketing towards them. In addition, we know to follow up via email or phone to provide them with more details on our cloud services because they're interested in the cloud. So this is a way to start building a contact list. Next week, we'll tell you more about what to do with that list and how to use it to drive sales. But this is one example of how every page is driving your customers toward a sale, whether it's a sale you can make right then or a relationship you can nurture so when your customers need your services one day, you're still in touch with them. And just really fast, here's another banner for a product that is available to purchase directly from our site. And you'll notice the idea is the same here. Big buttons toward the top of the page that allow you to purchase or contact us, and you know, the same information throughout the page. The only difference is we have the little shopping cart button first. All right, and next we'll talk about how to make your website Google friendly. And when I say Google friendly, I mean search engine friendly. This goes for all the search engines. So just a few basics of why you need to worry about search engine optimization. No matter how much time you spend creating a beautiful, functional website, it's really of no value if no one comes to it, right? So marketing is a great way to get your website out there, but you also want people to be able to find it on their own. And that's where search engines come in. Search engines such as Google, Bing, and Yahoo act like customized online directories, pointing users to websites that match the terms they were using in their search. So how this works. Using software robots called spiders, search engines crawl through websites to analyze content and determine what the site is about and how valuable the information is for people searching. One thing to note, search engines are very common sense in what they're looking for. Just always remember what their end goal is. The end goal of a search engine is to connect people with the most relevant information for what they're searching for. So that dictates what they're going to look for. What they look for is what keywords are used within the web pages and where, because that tells them what the pages are about. They're going to look for what sites link to your website, because links to your site from reputable or well-established websites can help improve your ranking. Why? Because it tells the search engine that you're legit, that other people in the industry know you. How recently the site's content has been updated. Spiders like content to be fresh and regularly updated. The reason being, they don't want to serve someone information that's 7 years old. You know, maybe that information is outdated at this point. So the more you update your site, the more spiders will see it as useful, relevant content. So we talked about keywords for a second. What are keywords? Keywords are words used within the content of your site that help search engines identify what the site is about. And I'll show you an example in just a second. Keywords usually relate to your industry. They usually include your products and your services and your location. And they also include anything else a customer might search for when looking for a business like yours. So how to choose your keywords. Google offers a free keyword tool called AdWords, and you can see it at google.com/AdWords. And on this site, you can enter words related to your company to see how often they're searched, and that can kind of give you some insight onto which words to include in your site. And here's an example. I've pretended here that I am a photographer, and I am trying to decide what my keywords will be. So I've entered at the top here a few key phrases related to my profession. So I've got photography, wedding photography, portraits, and headshots. So based on that search, Google AdWords will bring up a page that looks like this, and it'll show in the top left the terms that I searched. It'll show me the level of competition, which is, do a lot of other sites use these terms? If it's low competition, it means that no, actually there are fewer sites in this field using these terms. And then the number of times searched each month globally, and the number of times searched each month in my area. So this paints a picture for me of, so let's look at the first one, for example, photography. Low competition, but actually a high number of searches. So that's unusual. A lot of times when a word is really highly searched, it'll also have a lot of competition because people have figured out, you know, this is a word that gets searched a lot, or it's just, it just makes sense that people would be searching that. So if I were a photographer, I'd see that and say, oh, I definitely need to include the word photography on my site. Wedding photography, you see that it's considered a phrase. I mean, even though it includes the word photography, this is actually a phrase in how the search engine views it. So level of competition, medium. There are actually there's more competition for the phrase wedding photography than just for plain photography, which is interesting. You know, it's a lower number of global monthly searches and a lower number of local searches because it's more specific. So it'll also bring up suggested terms related to the terms you searched. So you can look through that list and see if there are any other words or phrases that you should be including on your. So the way to use these words is to create a list of often searched terms, and these are called short tail search terms. These are going to be the ones with the higher numbers, either globally or for your area or whatever is important to you. And second, you're going to create another list of more specific terms or phrases related to your company. These are going to be search terms, so things that are less searched but maybe more specific. And a lot of times the less searched terms are going to have less competition with certain exceptions, like the photography example from the previous page. And you're going to create a balanced strategy of employing these keywords. Use some of the short tail ones and some of the long tail ones. Well, where do you use them? You use keywords in your page title. This is the text you see at the top of your browser window. You use them in your content. This is what you read on the pages themselves, especially the headlines. You're going to use them in your meta descriptions. And this is the short description you see in search results. It's indexed by spiders, even though it's not something that actually appears on your site. And you're going to use them in your meta tags. This is what the spiders pay extra attention to when crawling your website. So you may say, I don't know where to enter a meta description. Well, as you're setting up your website builder tool will prompt you to ask what text you want to put in each of these locations. So give it some thought, and here's where you'll incorporate your keywords. One thing to mention, when incorporating keywords in your content, you're writing for both the search engine and for people. Search engines are pretty smart, and they figured it out. If you are just stuffing it full of keywords and not really writing anything that's of value, it needs to sound like something that's well written for your prospective customers. And so once again, it's just use common sense. You know, if you have a choice between using a keyword and a non-keyword, go with the keyword. But you know, have a balanced and human approach to it. And I also want to talk about improving crawlability. So the same best practices we discussed in the designing and writing section of this webinar are also best practices for search engine optimization. Because like I said, the spiders act like people. They crawl through your site just like a person does. So logical navigation helps them reach all the pages of your site. You want to make sure you don't have any orphans, as I previously mentioned. And once again, these are pages that don't have links to any other pages. If you have a navigation bar at the top of your site, this usually won't happen because the navigation menu contains links in most cases to your home page and maybe a few other pages. But a common orphan to find is the 404 error page that appears when one of your pages is down. So you want to make sure that if a spider comes to a 404 page on your site, it can get back to the rest of your site. Because if it can't, it's just going to stop crawling and it's going to jump off your site, and it might have missed some pages in doing that. So to prevent this, include a link back to your home page on your 404 error page if you can. Link your own web pages to each other using keywords instead of things like learn more, which doesn't give the spiders any context as to what sort of page the link is taking them to. So an example of better linking would be see our wedding photography prices. It includes keywords, and it gives the search engines more of an idea of what that page that's being linked to is going to be about. And here, here's a toolbox for you. These are just a few links of things that we've talked about so far, and a few other tools that will be helpful for you as you're building your site. There's a ton of information out there. Google is a good place to start. They do a lot of education on small businesses for best practices on setting up websites. And, and here are a few other resources that I think will be helpful as well. And one more thing, or a couple more things before we start taking questions, what we hope you take away. You can build and maintain your own professional-looking website. There are so many resources out there now that there's no excuse to have a website that doesn't look good. Do some research. Figure out what you like, what looks good to you, and then use one of the web builder tools to help you get there. Second, pages should work together to take visitors through the decision process with calls to action at each step along the way. Remember, it's not a wheel with separate spokes. All the pages should work together. Third, every page on your site is a potential entry point. Again, with search engines, you never know where someone's going to jump onto your site. So you can't guarantee that they will have read the page before. Make sure each page makes sense in its own right. Fourth, putting in a few extra minutes to make your site Google friendly can help you drive a lot more traffic. This is the way a lot of people will end up finding you, in addition to your marketing efforts. So coming soon, we have 2 webinars coming up, and next week's is a great companion piece to this one. It's all about driving people to your site. So you set up the website, how do you get people to come to it? So we're going to cover social media, email campaigns, tracking, and analytics in a lot more depth than we did here. And then we also have a webinar on HIPAA compliance, which applies to people in the medical profession, and it's all about how to keep your products within compliance. So now I'm going to turn it over to Javi and open it up to your questions.
All right, great. Thanks, Amanda. So we got some great questions coming in, and just for everybody that's listening in, yes, there was a brief connection issue with the screen sharing. I know you guys are still able to hear but not see the slides, but don't worry, we'll be sending the slides out as well, and we're still going to get to your questions. So I guess the first question we'll cover, and either Billy or Amanda, you can take this. Someone said that when some websites are loaded on smartphones, they load as like m.companyname.com. Does the company have to register a separate domain name for mobile devices? Adili, do you want to take that, or?
I think Amanda might want to answer this one specifically for Hostway in terms of domain registration, but with our system specifically, it wouldn't be a different domain, but each company usually, each domain registrar or hosting company will decide these things themselves. So I think Amanda should take this one.
Yeah, and like you said, for us, it's not a separate domain required either, so no.
Yeah, with our system, everything, the transition from a regular website to a mobile website is seamless. It's usually just creating one content source, and then you can click a button to have your mobile site created, and you can make the small changes that you might feel are relevant for mobile, for people looking for you on mobile. But the domain doesn't have to change, no.
Great. Another question we have that I pulled out was, if the majority of my customers are older men, does Facebook even make sense to me?
And I can take that. You raised a very good question, and it's, is Facebook right for everyone? And the answer is no, it's not. Not every business needs to be on Facebook. There are a few other social media outlets that you can use. Now, I will say that the older population is the fastest growing population on Facebook. So you might be surprised how many of your users are on there. But whether they interact with it the same way that the younger users do, probably not. So we'll cover that in more detail next week. But quick answer is no, not necessarily. There might be other social media platforms that are better for you, or you might not want to use social media at all.
Great. Did you want to add anything to that, or?
No, I absolutely agree. I also think that maybe your specific prospect, the customer, the man that you serve, the classic customer that you serve won't be on Facebook, but his wife or sister or aunt might be there, and we're all affected by the people around us, and brands can build themselves through the people around you as well. So it's your choice at the end. I'm sure that in the next session it'll be clearer.
Okay, great. The next question I want to bring up is someone says, back to the subject of a few different sites like website, mobile, and social, isn't it difficult to manage for a small business?
I can take this one if that's all right, Amanda.
Yes, absolutely.
As I mentioned in our introduction, it might not have been very clear until now, but our platform that Hostway is using enables a centralized management, which means that your mobile site and your website would both be managed from the same location. Possibly additional services that Hostway will offer will be managed from the same location. Your Facebook site, you could either have a Facebook page that you would create on your own, or you can create a Facebook page through our system as well. So it wouldn't be difficult to manage, no, because every time you put up a change in the content on your web page, it would be reflected in your mobile site and your Facebook site as well. So like I said, we've geared our platform towards making life easier for SMBs, and we know SMBs, and this is something that we know is very important, that your resources are very limited. So so that's what we've done with our system.
Great.
Okay.
Farmer, did you have anything to add to that? No.
No, I think Dilly covered it. Yeah, these services are available through Hostway and other providers as well, probably. So it should be a pretty intuitive process that's built in.
Great. And just one of the things I want to also point out is that I've got a lot of questions to ask if the there's a recording for the webinar. The slides will be available. Yes, they will be as soon as we have it, finalize the process and everything. We'll have it uploaded to our site, and you'll all be emailed with the link to get to that. So I just wanted to let everybody know. Okay. Well, it's another question that came up is somebody asked, what is the best resolution for images?
And I think that the standard is still 72 dpi for web images, just because that's kind of the best. You can't really distinguish anything different than that because of the low resolution of computer screens. Of course, there's the new high definition tablet screen and things like that, but that's certainly not becoming the standard yet. So I think 72 dpi is still the usual.
Great. And then I guess the last one I'll bring up is someone asked, are there discounts for registering like a domain for 5 or 10 years versus every year?
Typically, yes.
Okay. All right, great. So I think that is pretty much it. I see a few ones on here, but I can follow up offline with some of these. But I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and again, remind you that there is a part 2, driving people to your site, Thursday, November 15th, which is next week, 12 p.m. Central Time. And just again, thank you everybody for joining. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.